Welcome to the Prime Dean's Dialogue. I'm so very happy today to have with me here Dean Grace McCarthy for the Prime Dean's Dialogue from University of Wollongong, Australia. And Grace is the Dean of Business at the university, which is a very large university with 32,000 students. And as a Dean of Business, you are responsible for 5,000 of these students in Australia at that campus, but also 4,000 students abroad at your international campuses in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Dubai, and Singapore. So it is quite a large unit and a lot of students that are under your wings right now. I also learned that, and of course I'm very pleased to learn that your own research interests are about leadership, innovation, entrepreneurship, and also education. So that is indeed a very timely and wonderful topic with such a background that you carry with you. And I'm also pleased to meet you again here in the Prime Dean's Dialogue. We met wonderfully last year at the Global Forum, where we had a very nice and insightful engagement with one of the stakeholder panels that we had there with the deans. And I'm very happy to see you again here today.
Thank you very much for your welcome, Mette. It's lovely to be here. Nice to have a little bit of time out from the day-to-day to just actually think about Prime and all of these very meaningful engagements we have and how we think about it, what we do about it. So his job is trying to get lots of people to do things. So yes. Prime is actually a wonderful way of bringing people together and giving us a common focus.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would like to start by asking you, you have this beautiful collar behind you. What is this?
This is our rainbow staircase at the University of Wollongong. And one of the, I suppose, the good things about the pandemic, amidst all of the tragedy, is that we have had time to do some things on campus, some things that are meaningful and symbolic. And our rainbow staircase is there to show our commitment to diversity, to inclusion. It's a safe place for everyone, no matter where people come from, what their orientation, what their background. University is a place for all of us. And this is actually a commitment more broadly across our local community as well. We also have a rainbow crossing just near the beach. Our campus is 3 kilometers from a beautiful beach. We have 17 beaches all around us. So general invitation to everybody listening. Once the travel restrictions are eased, hopefully we can all meet in Australia as well.
That sounds like a wonderful invitation. Thank you very much for this. And I know that you're also very close to Sydney, only 80 kilometers away from the big city.
That's right. We actually have a campus at Sydney, and from our classrooms, we can see the Opera House and we can see Sydney Harbour Bridge. So again, it's just a wonderful place to visit and a great place for a Prime event. So let's plan for the future. It's one of the things that's been keeping me going over the past year is not just that we're struggling and we're getting through what we have to do at the moment, but thinking about what we're doing for the future and how we make the world a better place. And I do think there's huge value in people coming together physically, because online engagements, they're good for the specific information we're sharing. They're good for exchange things we've planned to talk about, but they're not as good for those casual conversations, you know, when you in the line for a cup of coffee or waiting for lunch at an event and you have those just chance conversations. You find somebody who's on your wavelength, and that can be the start of a beautiful relationship and a partnership going forward. So planning for the future, and a future where we not only get together virtually, but also in the real world.
No, but thank you very much for this optimistic future look upon the world and how we will soon, we hope, again meet each other in person. And let me start by asking you the question about how has the pandemic affected how you enact your commitment to Prime at the University of Wollongong. You already said a little bit about looking into the future, but in more general terms, because it has been a tough year for the universities and also in Australia.
It's been a very difficult year. Health-wise, Australia has been very lucky, and closing the borders meant that we have very few local cases, and that's fantastic. The downside of that is that the international students who would normally come and study with us haven't been able to come here. And so we've had to do a number of things to be able to continue to offer our education, which obviously meant going online. But when you bear in mind that for staff and students, the last 14 months has been very difficult because either of their own health issues and concerns about their friends and family, the uncertainty about how long the pandemic would last, not being able to do their normal social activities. So there has been a very high level of stress and anxiety, uncertainty, but for both staff and students. As teachers and educators, we found we're doing more, let's say, pastoral care, students wanting to connect, not just to talk about their subject, but just wanting somebody to talk to. Our international students in Australia lost their part-time jobs that were in retail and hospitality. And so we had collections, we had food banks where staff donated both money and actual goods from the supermarket, so that every week we could provide pantry packs for our students in Wollongong and in Sydney. It was at that level of distress. So that's all the difficult sides of doing all of that, putting not just our heads, but our hearts, and being with our students with empathy. But we have also then taken advantage of the new possibilities. And one of the new possibilities, of course, is all about the online experience. So as we have a campus in Dubai, for example, and we've had that campus for decades, for almost 3 decades now. So our colleagues there will drop into our classes on Zoom or WebEx, whatever it might be, and vice versa. Our students are doing a joint MBA project with the students in Dubai. So they're collaborating, and that means that they're actually both overcoming the practical difficulties like the time difference, but also learning about culture in a real way, not just learning theoretical frameworks. Yes, we do some work with them on Hofstede or Trompenaars or whoever else we might find useful as a way for them to think about the differences, but there's no replacement for actually working with students, with each other on projects that they actually get marks for. So it's serious in that respect, and MBA students often want to get good marks, so they have to find ways to work effectively. And it's been great for our staff as well, whereas we used to have quite a kind of I suppose, a traditional quality assurance focus with our Dubai campus. Now it is much more collaborative, and that's because we can develop the relationships, the human side of it, before we go to talking about exchanging ideas on the subjects. In going online, I would say we were concerned not about the traditional type of classes, but about some of our really impactful experiences. And some of those are our study tours. So for example, taking MBA students to Vietnam and Laos, where in Laos they heard about the 18th SDG, the unexploded ordinances, and they actually saw some of those mines being blown up. So that's just wow. And you can't replicate that. And we have found ways to do really meaningful online experiences, and we're building on that. So if you're going to do a virtual Chinese study tour, we're going to take you to a Chinese restaurant as well. And so make sure you get some of the smells and the tastes, because some things just aren't as meaningful if they're just online for information. And the most remarkable one for me has been working with our Aboriginal leaders. So I have a wonderful colleague, Jade Kennedy, who's an Aboriginal elder, a leader in the community. And for the last couple of years, he's been taking our MBA students to sites, sacred sites, sites of significance to Aboriginal people. And we sit around and we get to learn about each other, and we get to learn about Aboriginal approaches to sustainability, to leadership, to decision-making in a beautiful way that has actually led to students from a variety of places, whether Mongolia, New York, Australia, all having deep insights into what they could do in their own communities. And we were featured in the Financial Times Sustainability Showcase for that award, and also for our Women in MBA program, which is about increasing the number of women taking an MBA. So in taking this online over the past year, we thought, how could this work? It's not the same if you're online as sitting on the ground in a rainforest or watching a rainbow and a waterfall. Those are magic moments that you just take away forever. But in fact, the online experience was also really powerful, because what Jade did was he did prepare a series of short videos about really key concepts for the students to understand. But then he asked them to make an artifact of some kind, anything they chose, to represent one of those concepts in their own culture. And so a concept might be something like a journey or the concept of kinship. And the students put such thought into that, and they produce these beautiful things. And Jade said, you can do anything you like as long as it's not an essay. and students tend to respond to that invitation. So there were paintings and there was stories and poems, and some did PowerPoint photo compilations of their life's journey. And because they put such thought into it and related to the concepts, it also had a very deep and meaningful impact. And we were given the MBA Roundtable Award for taking the program online in that way. So now, 2021, we have a combination of students who are sitting with us in the classroom and students who are studying with us online. So on some days, we will have students both at the same time. And so they can interact in this dual mode. It has been, again, another learning curve for us. How do you do that effectively to actually make sure it's a meaningful experience? And for some things like the Aboriginal leadership experience, we've done an alternate one where for the students who are here and they're in the country and local, we've been able to take them back to the rainforest, back to the waterfalls, to the beaches, and explore that with Jade. And with the online students, do the online version. What's so powerful about this is that they're not learning about Aboriginal leadership. They're learning about leadership and the Aboriginal perspectives. And so they're learning that they must respect Aboriginal cultures because we have so much to learn from Aboriginal people. So the respect comes into it there. So simple examples that Jade will give will be, if I'm going to go fishing and I want a spear, I will only take one spear from the tree because I only need one. I only fish with one spear at a time. The same, if somebody were to take 2 boomerangs, people would think he was crazy because he only needs 1 boomerang. So just take what you need, little things like that. Or Jade saying, it's responsibility for all of us to take care of the country where we live. And that means taking care of the land, the waterways, the sea, the sky, the animals, the plants, all of that, not just humans. And when we think about that responsibility, that's a lot of work. So I would not invade another country or another people because acquiring more land would just give me more work to do. Why would I want to do that? So it's getting people to shift their perspectives, and it's just having an amazing impact on our students, taking away, making a commitment to what they will do with their own community and in their own community. It's been absolutely extraordinary.
So that's a wonderful narrative and a wonderful concrete example of how you work with your students to actually develop that respect that you cannot just read in a book and develop it, from a cognitive skills perspective. You need other sets of skills to actually be able to explore and feel that, you could sort of say, and engage with how does the world look from the perspective of the other. Thank you for sharing this this wonderful narrative. I think that's very beautiful and could be very inspirational for I would say any country, any region in the world to learn from this. Do I understand you right? Because I understand that you also got a recognition international from Financial Times and from Times Higher Education on the sustainability engagement. And was this related to in particular this journey?
The Financial Times was related to this, and the Times Higher Education was related to what we're doing across the whole campus, across our research, across our teaching, and the campus operations themselves, how we're trying to make sure that we actually live up to those principles of sustainability. And that can be as simple things as putting water bubblers around, or where you can refill your water bottle so we don't keep using throwaway things, encouraging people to bring their own cups to a cafe. There are lots of little things that if we both role model and make them easy for people to do, they do make a difference. And we really also are encouraging that cross-disciplinary collaboration. So one of the things I think that has happened with the pandemic, while it has made research more challenging because people have these various caring responsibilities, but also it is allowing people to say, well, I can't travel, I can't go to conferences. I can collaborate locally, and starting those conversations for people to say, well, actually, they are interested in food security as well. Or there's so many people interested in climate action. It's amazing. And even within business, we have lots of disciplines. But when then we go across, we say, okay, now the engineers are doing things on sustainable supply chain, and so are our scientists, and how do we all work together and these global challenges? So again, with all the difficulties of the pandemic, there have also been some upsides. And the upsides, one of those for me, is that collaboration is easier than ever before, both locally and internationally. And it does start with relationships. It starts with people actually saying, not just do we have common interests that we know about intellectually, but we have shared values and we actually want to work together. So that's where we're heading with that.
So yes, and no, so the old sort of saying with think global and act local, is that it may be sort of an overused phrase, but what does it look like from a University of Wollongong, from in relation to Prime perhaps even?
Yeah, well, if we look, for example, with our colleagues in Dubai, so as I said, it's very easy for us now to drop into each other's classes for the students to do joint projects. And we're rolling that out in a very, I suppose, a slow way in a sense, in that those staff who already have good relationships are going ahead and we're bringing the others with us behind, because you can't just tell people to collaborate. People have to want to. They have to see that there's a benefit to it. So we would actually think that working locally is important for our staff and students to understand how business works in Australia. And rather than just saying globally, what's the multinational version of this, then to actually say, well, how does that work in Dubai? So on Saturday, for example, one of my wonderful colleagues in Dubai, Professor Jayashri, Professor Jaya, as we all call her, she joined our class, and the two of us have done some research about women in leadership in the Arab Middle East. And so Jaya, the students had the paper in advance and they did read it, but it's so much more powerful for somebody to actually take you through it. So now the students have that opportunity to actually compare what's happening in the Arab Middle East and what's happening in Australia. So they have a local perspective and they have a global perspective, and they realize that there are different perspectives. And that is important, just that recognition, the sort of recognition you get when you learn another language and say, oh, there is a different way of seeing the world. I didn't know that. So, which means that rather than go in with the assumption that we all think the same way, you know, if you look at a traditional leadership paper, probably written in one of the Anglo countries, quite possibly in the US, and it will talk about leadership is la, 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 la. And now for our students, they realize, well, that actually doesn't make sense. Leadership depends on context, and the way I lead may be different with different people. And then, of course, they have to get on to thinking about, well, I have a multicultural workforce because of migration over the years. And even in a small corner store in Australia, you will find a multicultural workforce. So it's not just a big multinational. So how do I work with all the people in my team in a way that gets the best from them and is fair and equitable across the board? So all sorts of deep thinking that goes on because of taking that with the global perspective and the local perspective, sharing what's happening, and the students realizing that actually some of their preconceptions may have been totally false. So for example, in the United Arab Emirates, they have had a 50-50 male-female representation in STEM subjects for some years now. They have a mandatory requirement to have at least one woman on boards. They're doing a lot of really great stuff and making a difference. So in the research we had done, which was about some successful women leaders and what had made the difference to them, one of the students commented that there was the role of the father figure that often made a difference, and how a male mentor might make a difference. And they realized that they could do things in Australia as well with the women in their team. So they learn about things in different perspectives, different cultures, but they also think about what does that mean for them in their own context. So these exchanges of ideas, of information are really wonderful to be able to do that. And taking it through to the very kind of practical details, like let's think about plastics in the ocean. We're very fortunate here in Australia, as our campus is by the beach, and it's easy for us to get up in the morning and have a walk and see the sunrise. We're very fortunate. And we know that if there is a piece of waste on the beach, a piece of plastic, it might kill a turtle, it might kill a seabird, it might wash offshore and to another country, and basically poison the planet, and we have to do things. So we like to look at the very local examples of our own beaches, but think globally about how do we actually do this for the betterment of the planet, because each of us has a role to play. And that's what we want our students to realize, that they have agency, they can do things. They're not just learning theories and something to get a piece of paper and a certificate. They're actually being asked to think about how they can be agents for change, how they can make a difference, how they can help the whole world. And that's a big ask, it's a big challenge.
No, that's a wonderful challenge, and that's a wonderful way of thinking about students, which I think we should all learn a lot from. The idea of students having agency. I think too often we think of students as passive receivers of knowledge, and less so of the agency model. Here towards the end, I would love to ask you, because I know you are, Grace McCarthy, I know you are very busy as a dean locally in Australia and internationally with all the 4 campuses that you have around the area. But I also know that you read books, and I would like to sort of ask a last question to you, and that is if you have a recommendation for us, if you're reading a good book these days, and what that book would be, and why you would recommend it to the rest of us to read.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading a book that I have read before, but I keep dipping back into it, and it's a small little book, and it's called Herding Cats. And it is about, the subtitle is Leadership for Aspiring Academic and Research Leaders. It's by Jeff Garrett and Graham Davies, and they talked to lots of academic leaders. And so the book is full of little bits of advice, little snippets. You don't have to read it from cover to cover. You can just open it at any page and you'll find a quote, or you'll find something that will make you smile, or something that will resonate, because it talks about all the important things like culture and communication. It talks about collaboration, talks about conflict, talks about change. So as an academic leader, I find when I open it, I always find something of value. So that's that's what I am in reading at the moment. Apart from the fiction, I love reading fiction as well, because fiction, I think, gives you an insight into how other people think and feel, and in a way that the non-fiction books don't. But for the community, I think the best one I can recommend is Herding Cats by Jeff Garrett and Graham Davies.
Thank you so much for this recommendation. I will definitely look into this Herding Cats book. I have not heard about it before. Sounds like something that could give a lot of food for thought for all of us. So here, I just want to, here towards the end, I would just want to say thank you so much, Dean Grace McCarthy from University of Wollongong, Australia. I truly enjoyed this short conversation, this Prime Dean's Dialogue, and thank you for sharing your insights. Impressive work that you're doing with the students, and the idea of giving students agency, but also that you're actually exposing students for things that may be very difficult for us to learn just by reading and studying, but we have to feel in using our other senses. Thank you so much also for sharing your information about and your experiences with how you have managed in a very positive way the challenging times during the past year in the pandemic. And I'm very aware of all the wonderful things that you do at University of Wollongong, Australia, in relation to Prime and in relation to sustainable development, not least from my engagement over the past long time, many months, with Dr. Professor Belinda Gibbons, who is also a Prime board member. And we know that there's a lot of extra additional effort that goes into taking such a big responsibility and making the Prime chapter Australia, New Zealand shine, because that is indeed what Belinda has done and what she keeps on doing. So thank you very much for your support for this work, and also thank you to Belinda for organizing this Prime Dean's Dialogue.
I am so lucky to have Belinda working with me, and it's an absolute pleasure. So apart from what Belinda does for the Australia New Zealand chapter and the global board, and I know that sometimes Belinda has been up in the middle of the night because times don't always work when you're living in Australia, but Belinda does an amazing job across the university in driving the sustainability agenda in all the faculties, in coming into people's classes, whether they're talking about food security or whether they're talking about an engineering topic. working with local partners like the local city councils and helping them to incorporate the SDGs into their strategic plans. So absolutely amazing. But I think one of the most amazing things is just Belinda herself. She just has a beautiful way of helping people to understand the ideas, but doing it in a way that they want to get involved. She is a shining light. She is a person that you feel happy when she walks into the room. And sometimes I've heard a description of people as radiators and drains, and the drains kind of make you feel exhausted after you've talked to them because they only see the problems. Belinda's a radiator. And because of that, she helps bring people on the journey. She is our champion for all things to do with Prime and all things to do with the SDGs. And we're really lucky to have her.
Yes, you are. So thank you very much. And I hope to see you very soon again. Thank you.
Thank you, Meta. And hopefully you'll come to Australia once the borders are open.
Thank you. I hope so. Thank you.
Okay.